How's everybody doing tonight? Tonight will be my 26th discussion. Tonight I'm speaking with Peter Zetlan from the amazing band Sinaloa. He is also the creator of the Tin Can Full of Dreams Fests. And he also created his own record label back in 1998. Great guy. I've been dying to talk to him. He was probably one of the first ones I wanted to talk to, but it took a while for us to get going. But hope everybody's safe. Hope everybody's doing good. Luke, how you doing? That Celtics game was super painful today. So we're just waiting for Pete to jump on. Should be a good one. Here we go. Hey, how you doing?
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
I want to thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you taking the time out to do this. Like I said, I wanted to ask you to come on first off, but it just took a while for us to kind of, get together and work something out. But I appreciate you doing this and taking the time out to do it.
Yeah, totally. I'm glad to do it. I've been watching the other ones. They've been pretty great.
Thank you.
I need to just look back and think about all that stuff. So
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, I haven't seen you since I think the last show I ever set up was that show in Kingston, New Hampshire with you guys and Red Yellow and
yep.
Bravo fucking Bravo. I think that was the last time I saw you.
Yeah, that could be. That might be that. That was a while ago.
Yeah, I think that was 2006, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, I know. Everything's a blur now. I try to remember stuff and it's kind of a blur. So I guess what I want to start off with is how did you get into listening to punk and hardcore music when you were a young kid, and what drew you to it, and what kind of bands were you into back then, and how did it all start?
Yeah, I mean, I was influenced by my brother's music, so stuff he listened to, I would just, I'd want to listen to all the time. He wasn't listening to like super punk stuff, but sort of maybe in that alternative world, and then definitely got turned on to things like Jane's Addiction and Dinosaur Jr. and started watching, 120 Minutes. And then in middle school, 8th grade, some kid gave me a Fugazi record, 13 songs, and that was just sort of like the intro to it all. And I grew up in Andover, so once I was in high school, there was just a ton of bands there. We had a place called the Red Barn that was in North Andover that did a ton of shows. I don't know if you ever went there.
Yeah, I've been there like a handful of times.
Okay, so we would, like going to shows in Boston wasn't even a thing because I never looked there because there was so much stuff happening in the Merrimack Valley. So there was just shows all the time that I would go to. So then it was just sort of like a slippery slope with like, Piebald was playing and Converge was playing and 10 Yard Fight and Cave In and, the band just kind of continued at that point.
Yeah. Did you ever venture up to New Hampshire to see shows up here?
I don't think until, I can't remember that I did. Maybe not in high school that much.
Yeah. I know that Safe and Sound up in Rochester, New Hampshire was having a lot of shows in like the mid to late 90s and also Cafe Savoy in Manchester. I didn't know if you like went up here to see shows up in here.
Yeah, no, not so much. There was a ton of shows here, and then kids that I grew up with were doing shows in Lawrence and things like that. So we were just kind of doing our own thing. And then Brendan and Luke, who I played with in Sinaloa, they had their own band, or they had two bands, and so I just sort of kind of glommed onto whatever they were doing and followed them around and went to all their shows.
Yeah. What kind of bands were you like your favorites back then in the Merrimack Valley hardcore? Obviously, everybody loved Cave In and Converge, and like I said, I've gone to a million shows like in Methuen, like you said, in Andover, and there was like a lot of shows at Merrimack College. I remember.
Yeah, I went to. The Piebald guys were around the same age. So Aaron was same year as me. Travis was a year ahead. Andy was same year as me. So, so they just sort of started they had that band Dork Knob, which started, and then Piebald came around. And so it was really just like going to shows that they were playing, Converge was playing, I see someone put 357 Noise. Definitely saw them. Oh, that's Luke. Geneva Cross was a band. Luke and I were just talking about them. So there was just a ton of bands around them. You know, so those were like the big bands that I was into. I really liked. I don't know if you ever heard 7% Solution.
Yep.
I really like their stuff, but they don't have anything digitally. I wish that they would put it in.
Yeah, I know. I can't find anything online at all from them. Now, were you back in the day? Were you kind of like? I know sometimes Converge and Cave In would get the crowd was kind of moshy. Was when you were young? Was that your thing, or were you kind of just in the back type of?
Yeah, I mean, I was more to the side.
Yeah, because I remember like mid '90s to like 97, 98. It was like a big thing back then.
Yeah, I wasn't so much into the moshing.
Now, what turned you kind of over towards like I guess you would say like screamo side of things? Like, how did that kind of work in? Because, like I said, when we first talked, you said one of the first shows you booked was that Cave In. Was it Cave In, Piebald, Bane, and I forget who else it was.
Yeah, so we had a friend who lived in Andover. His name's Ryan, and he played with Luke and Brendan in a band called Haley, and then he was in that band Hassani Saba and a few others. And so he and I tried to do a couple shows together, and so that show was Piebald, Cave In, Converge, In My Eyes, and Jesuit played that one, and so yeah, I mean, those bands were just around, so it was just like trying my hand at like, seeing other kids that we knew do shows and wanting to try that out, and seeing that it was like something that was, it wasn't easy to do, but it was something that you could do, and being really inspired. And I didn't play music at that time, so it was kind of like my kind of into being part of it. So that was sort of, I got into doing that. And then in terms of like music, it was just, obviously like Spotify and internet wasn't really around then. So, it was just people going to shows and stuff like that. Like the New Bedford Fest happened. And I remember, I think Promise Ring played one year, and so people would just sort of like make mixtapes or bring you back records and stuff like that if you didn't go. And it was just kind of like, that's how you'd found out about bands, or, then eventually getting zines and stuff like that and reading reviews, and then just being kind of like, that sounds like a band I'd like, and, mail order and stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, I mentioned last week on my discussion about Very Distribution, the catalog.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
That was like an encyclopedia for me. I'd look through the summaries and what bands they sounded like, and I must have sent like 100 money orders to Very just to get stuff like that. I didn't know if you remembered Very.
Yeah, I didn't order a ton from there. I mean, I probably didn't start ordering records till end of high school. I'd probably just get stuff when I went to shows. And then also, I would just like looking through bands' records and seeing, who they thanked and things like that. And that was kind of either I'd heard the bands, or it was like, I haven't heard this band, but seems like, they're in the thank you list, so I'm going to try it out. Or they'd be on the same label, and so, get it through that.
No, was it frustrating in the beginning when you tried to set up shows? Because like I said, I set up shows back in late '90s, early 2000s, and it was tough. I mean, especially with the Tin Can Fest, like you had bands from Europe playing and all over the country. In the beginning, when you first started setting up shows, was it kind of frustrating for you? But you still went on and did it because you set up like pretty much like the most amazing shows in New England at that time, when you really started getting into the niche of what you were doing. You know what I mean? I salute you because you changed my life with the Tin Can Fest. Like I said, I was a metalcore guy, a mosher kind of. And then my buddy Brian, who used to see me with all the time, he was talking about the Tin Can Fest, and he took me to it. And after that show, my thoughts and like about music went the other way, and I started listening to all kinds of music like that. And then from then on, it's been like that until I'm almost 50. So I thank you, because that show was game changing.
Yeah, I know what to say. I
It
didn't
was
know
a
if to
game changer.
say sorry or.
No, it was a game changer for me. It opened my eyes. I couldn't believe it. I mean, just alone seeing like Chispa and Enfold from, you know, they're from overseas and stuff
Yeah,
like that, just blew me away. It was like that fest was incredible. Both days were amazing. So I guess I was rambling, but setting up shows, was it kind of frustrating in the beginning, or?
well, we had a friend who did a bunch of shows in Lawrence when we were in high school, and I mean, it was great, but also probably like to our own like just wanting to see bands, we would have he'd book a show that had like 7 bands on it, which obviously like wasn't odd back then, but probably not the best idea. Which would sort of guarantee that there'd be a lot of people there because you just had, based on just how many bands were there, like even if kids didn't show up, you had enough bands that it felt like there was a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But I also think like we didn't really think about necessarily like, oh, we got to make sure we're paying the bands. We need to get enough people to come at the door, or things like that. It was sort of like, you know, we wanted to just see bands, and if they were coming through, we wanted to try to do shows for them. Um, so we had a friend Justin who did a bunch of shows, um, and then at that point, like I was, just trying my hand at doing it. So, the festival just sort of came about because um, I had the idea of like after I'd done some shows, wanting to do something to help we had a foundation for my family. My mom had passed away from breast cancer when I was younger. So we had done a road race for a while, and then that sort of fizzled out after a couple of years of just, for one reason or another. And so it sort of was dormant for a while. And then uh, I don't know, I had just finished my first year of college, and through that year wanted to, was doing shows in the city and felt like was being more exposed to, more bands and things like that. And so just felt like, why not try to do something and see what would happen at that point. There's other fests. It's not like I was doing something completely original. You had to, like Michigan Fest and a bunch of things were popping up. And so I think it was sort of just dumb luck. Like I ended up having, the weekend that I picked for the first one just happened to be when a bunch of bands were coming through. So you had things like, bands like Reversal Man and Assuck and Locust and Jenny Piccolo played that first night, and Adam and His Package played. The first night, 400 Years played, and Engine Down and Ethel Meserve, Piebald played that. So it was just sort of like, I don't know, stars aligned, and I was lucky to have those bands come through, and some were on tour and some were just sort of, made a point that to come out, but it was pretty cool, and it was inspiring to say like, let's keep trying to do it. But it was hard, I mean, I was writing letters to bands at that point.
Yeah.
I was actually, when you had contacted me, I started looking through like stuff that I had and found some old letters that I had gotten back from bands or had written to bands. I had one letter from Cable that I had the wrong address, so it came back to me, but I kept it. So just seeing stuff is pretty cool that, the history. I wish I had documented it more. Like I don't have a lot of photos, or I didn't videotape any of it through the 5 years because I think, I was just sort of in it. And so I wasn't thinking like, oh, I should document as it goes on. So some of it's kind of like, bits and pieces here and there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, writing letters, I used to do that. And if they had an AOL messenger, or you get somebody's number, by chance, you'd call somebody on the phone just randomly and be like, hey, I used to ask bands from like Maryland and Georgia, hey, do you want to drive up to New Hampshire to a show? It's like, that's why I was asking if it's like frustrating. And on top of that, you had bands from all over the place, which is incredible, especially at that time.
Yeah, I mean, I think after again, like the first year, bands were kind of like, yeah, we're not driving out to Massachusetts. Like, it doesn't make any sense. And probably, and it, now it makes sense. Like, of course they're not going to drive out because it's like, I couldn't guarantee a lot of money or things like that. And bands were really good about it. I mean, I learned as I went, trying to figure out like what made sense in terms of like paying bands and things like that. But then I think after that first year, I mean, again, like I was pretty lucky to get the bands that were there, that I think then that next year it was easier to get bands and then figure out sort of like, once I set the dates, some people were, either made sure that they were like touring at that time, and then others were sort of like a little bit, again, just dumb luck of like, like Chispa and Enfold. Like I think it just ended up being those dates, or that or that guy who booked it, that guy from Bloodlink booked their tour, and so I think he just ended up making sure that those dates worked out.
Yeah.
So
now what 1998 was the first year of the very first one, or was it 97?
So 98 was the first year, so that was in North Andover for the first day, and then the second two were in Lawrence.
Lawrence, yeah. And then how did it go? And then it went Worcester the year after that. And then...
Yes, we did the Space that next summer, probably around the same, like early July. We did 3 days. So we did 3 days every year. So we did like a Friday night show, Saturday and Sunday. Sunday was always a little hit or miss because, kids who would drive out, they got to head back home. So I'd always try to like, the first year I didn't really think about that. So the second year, I tried to think about like a band that was from around. So like Bane played that second year.
Yeah.
Which brought in like a completely different crowd. That show was very strange because like the Convocations of and Rob Raz opened, or they played early, but then you had Bane and Barrett play. So it was cool that it was very different worlds, but you had this sort of like, non-aggressive music, and all of a sudden into like a mosh pit later on.
Yeah.
You could see just like kids coming and going. It was very different.
Yeah, I remember that show. I was kind of like pushed up on the side when Bane and Barrett, like I kind of like just stayed out of the way. I was kind of up against the wall, up a little bit. But that was a great fest. And then the third one was in
the third one. We went to North Providence. So in hindsight, like should have just found like a spot that I could stick with. But the other hard part was like, I did it at the nights at Columbus and Lawrence, and like they were great, but then they sort of, I don't think, wanted to do that magnitude of a show. And then the Space was great, but I can't remember. I think they were still open around them, but they were having some troubles.
Yeah.
And I ended up, a bunch of friends of mine were living in Providence, and so I started going to shows there, and it was easier. At that point, I think, I was thinking about doing Boston, but it was hard to find a space in Boston. So I was lucky to have friends there who helped find a space. So we had I think it was a Nights at Columbus in North Providence in 2000. And then those next 3 years from 2000 to 2002 were all in the Providence area.
So did you think about still doing the fest, or after 2000, what was it, the last one, 2002, you just kind of had enough of doing it? Like, how did it kind of end? Because I was always pushing you to do another fest because they were so amazing, you know what I mean? And for a great cause on top of that, it's just an amazing cause to have it.
Yeah, I don't really know. I mean, I stopped doing as many shows around then, and I started playing with Luke and Brendan, and so that got, not like we were super busy, but like that took a lot more time along with the work I was doing. But I don't know. I mean, I was looking back about like some of the notes I had kept. I remember, I think it was the fourth year, it was back and forth of like, do it, should I not do it? And then we did it. And that year was great, but I really don't remember a ton about it. In 2001, the timing was really unfortunate. So we did it the weekend after September 11th, I think, or 2 weeks after. It was pretty close.
Yeah.
And so there was bands that like just couldn't come out. Like Panthers were supposed to play, but they couldn't because they were in New York.
Yeah.
You just couldn't like get out.
Mm.
And so, it was a weird weekend. Because I think there was just a lot of heavy feelings and uncertainties about what was happening in the world. And it was a nice distraction. We also had a really close friend who passed away in the spring of that year. And so it just felt like that year felt really weird of him not being there. And then September 11th happened. And so I just was sort of kind of like, do I want to keep doing this? But then we did the next year, and it was, I mean, that I was happy to kind of go out on like on a high note. Felt really great in terms of having like, again, it just sort of happened that that Orchid was doing their sort of last tour, and got to have them there, and that was just you know, that show was kind of insane when they played in
Yeah.
reverse and combat. So it was a nice kind of note to go on, but definitely look back on a kind of like, you know, of wanting to keep doing it later on, but then not really knowing sort of like how to restart that all.
Um, One question I had is the one in Worcester at the space. Did anybody film that, or is there any pictures from that? Because I always remember that show, and I can't find one thing about it. I didn't bring my camera at that one. I brought my camera to the last one, but I'm dying to like see some sort of footage. And also, you can attest that Seisha played that show, correct?
Yeah,
Because I saw Seisha there, and everybody doesn't remember it. Like even Jamie and a couple other guys don't even remember playing that show, but I distinctly remember them playing.
yeah, they played. I mean, to be honest, I don't remember them like a ton about the set, but if you ask me about most of the band sets, I don't know because I was
Yeah,
just
running
running.
around.
I didn't really get to appreciate a lot of the shows and stuff like that. But that was my intro to a lot of those guys there, like, um, Steve Roach, who was playing with them at that point. He and I, we're not in touch as much, but like we became pretty close through the years after that. So like, then did shows when he was in Book Fly and then Off Minor, and just have, kept in touch with him through that. So that was definitely sort of our first intro through that. But again, like I don't, I can't remember a lot of the
Yeah,
sets.
I mean, because they're not on the flyer either. But like I said, some kid was like, "Oh, have you seen Station?" I'm like, "No, I don't even know who that is." And he's like, "Oh, you got to watch this set." And so
Yeah.
me and my buddy Brian went over there, and I was like blown away. And I think it was in between. I mean, like Jerome's Dream and States of Seeds and Portrait was like kind of all around like that same time. Maybe Murdoch played before
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. And the thing was like, I mean, again, because I forget, like I had a friend in college who helped me build the website for that. I mean, he built the website, I didn't do anything. And, but anytime like bands were, added, I'd have to ask him, and then he'd have to find time during school. And it was like, not first on his plate to do it. So there was definitely like bands that I would put on the flyer that, said they were going to play. And then all of a sudden, something came up they couldn't play, or bands that, I just wasn't updating the flyer and things like that. And then, it became like a theme where I think almost like every year there'd be like a band that would just show up and be like, hey, can we jump on?
Yeah,
And so sometimes, I mean, I tried to make it happen because it's hard to say no at that point when they're there.
yeah,
Uh, so that was always funny. But so there'd be bands that like were on tour with another band, but I hadn't asked them to do it. And it was kind of like, okay, you can play a quick set.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That happened. I mean, that's happened to me a bunch of times. I used to book shows at Exit 23, and all of a sudden, like a band would drive, heard about the show, and just would drive and show up and be like, "Hey, can we play?" I know the guys from the Fail, from Providence. They're great guys. They showed up, I think, when I booked 10 grand at Exit 23, and they and they said the same thing. They were like, "Hey, we're here. We got our equipment. Can we just go on?" And I was like, "Yeah, like hell yeah, like play."
It's so crazy that people do that.
Yeah, especially if like, what if they show up late and the show's over? You know what I mean? And you're driving from Providence all the way to
Yeah.
almost to the border of New Hampshire. It's
Or you have like a set show with, 4 bands, and you're like, I don't want to do any more bands.
yeah, yeah, exactly. But like I said, nobody has any videos of that one from the space, do they? Because I'm dying to see some.
We have this kid that I lived with in college. He came to the show, and I distinctively remember like he videotaped a lot of it, and I've written to him since, and he claims that it's at his mom's house, which he doesn't live there anymore. So
Yeah.
I try to like hound him, but not too much about trying to find it because I'd love to see it, because that's
Me too.
I mean, that's the year. I think that's the year that nothing exists from.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen like, I know I've seen photos from it. Like Megan, who played in Ampere, and a bunch of other bands. She took photos, and you can see obviously like there's people with video cameras and cameras in it, but I
Yeah.
don't know people, so it's just trying to find them.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching this, send some footage
Yeah, please.
photos, please. And also that was the first time that I saw you playing Ache.
Oh yeah.
Can you just speak about that band and how it got created? And I remember somebody with a motorcycle helmet on, dragging a drum around the floor, and
All right, that would be Pat. Uh, yeah, I, I don't even know. Like, it was Brendan and Pat who both played in Edelvry. Brendan played in Sinaloa with me, um, and then our friend Pete, who passed away. He was the guy I was talking about, and so we just started a band. Like, Brendan played bass, and Pat had already played drums. Pete and I didn't play anything, but it was just sort of a joke of kind of, I don't even know what you would call it. Maybe people would say is sort of, I don't know, grindcore, power violence. Who knows? I don't know. It was a mess.
yeah,
But it was fun. Um, and we just started playing shows and just writing, kind of silly, dumb songs. But it was a lot of fun. So we got to play some shows, and it just became this weird, like we played this one show we weren't supposed to play, but uh, Brendan did a show at the Space for 400 Years and Sleepy Time Trio and Orchid and Jerome's Dream
wow,
and someone else I can't remember. Maybe someone will remind us. Maybe, but there was a lag in time because 400 Years and Sleepy Time Trio were stuck somewhere. So we were trying to kill time, and they weren't going to be there for a little bit. So Anton Boardman and Ache decided to do a split set. So we just sort of set stuff up. I think Edelvry played that. So we just set up the equipment, and we would play two or three songs, and they would play two or three songs, and we just kind of like. But it got insane. Like the Pete who sang took all his clothes off, and it just became like there's video of it. It's great. It was really funny. It was crazy. I'm sure 400 Years and Sleep Time Trio came in and was like, what the what did we sign up for?
oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys record anything? Is there anything out there that's like out in the internet somewhere?
Nothing on the internet that I know of. We did a demo, and then we were on some comp that uh I can't even remember. I don't remember what it's called, but we had a song on it that I was pretty proud of. It was a good song. And actually that band Yulcid just covered, or they didn't just, but they had recorded a cover of that song that they put up on their Bandcamp, which was funny to listen to and see.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So that kind of like forged Sinaloa. Then obviously, like Ache, kind of you guys knew each other and doing shows and stuff like that. How did
Yeah.
Sinaloa form? How and I know that like you, two of you guys weren't playing those instruments that you're playing in Sinaloa in the beginning. How did that come about, and what was the idea around it, and just like
Yeah. So Brendan, Luke, and I grew up together in Andover. I met that, really started building a friendship with them in high school. And so then they had started a band called Haley with Ryan and Pat. Ryan was in Hassani Saba and Pat played Edelvry. So they were in that band, and then that sort of fizzled out. And then they started Edelvry, and I didn't play music. So this was high school, but I was sort of like, you know, if they found it annoying, they didn't tell me, but I would just sort of hang out all the time. So I go all their shows, and I did their first record. I put that out, and I booked a tour for them, and I would even go to like practices. Saying that now, I'm kind of like, what did I do? Like I just watched, but I just like being with those guys a lot and like their music, and so and we lived in Andover. There wasn't a ton to do, and I guess that's what I did. So that they were a band for a while, and then that sort of kind of abruptly stopped. Yeah, I was the fifth Beatle, and thanks, Luke. I'll take that as a compliment. So they stopped playing, and they had a band in between. So Brendan, Luke, and this guy Nate, who was in Tip and Canoe, started a band called Now Right M. They played off and on for a little bit, and then right at the sort of like tail end of college, we started playing music a little bit with our friend Pete, and then he passed away, and then we that summer of 2001 we were kind of like, let's one day, it wasn't like let's start a think about making this band, but it was just like, I don't know, we had nothing to do. And so I didn't play guitar. Brendan played bass, so he was probably the most proficient. Luke had never played drums, but it was just fun, and so we wrote some songs, and then just kind of stuck it out, and then went forth with that. So the band went into some kind of, we didn't have the name at first. We didn't know what to call it. And then I think we played maybe like 1 or 2 shows. And then we played the 4th year of the fest. And I don't know if we called ourselves God Can't Party at that point, or I forget if that was what we were called at that point. But it was early on. And then this kid who was living in Providence, his name's Mike Taylor, he was in that band Palaka, had asked if he could play with us, and we were kind of like, oh, okay, like, why would you want to play with us? But he did, and so we played 2 shows with him, one in Providence, one in New York, and we recorded a song with him, and then that fizzled out, and so Brendan, Luke, and I continued with those songs and kind of the trajectory and had decided kind of like, we'd started before of like, we weren't going to have bass, whether it was, consciously or not, that the friend who had passed away was going to potentially play bass. And so it just sort of became this thing of like, all right, let's just do this without a bass player. And that's where it went.
In 2002, you guys put out the demo. That was the first thing you guys put out, right?
Yeah, that was the first thing we did. We recorded with our friend Mike Law, who lived in, I don't know if he was living in Haverhill, but we recorded at his dad's house. He grew up in Haverhill. I don't know if you ever saw his, he was in this band called Splinter 12, who played in Haverhill, played in Merrimack Valley a lot, and then he went on to Yulsid.
Oh, yeah, I've seen Yulsid.
Saw some of them. So he recorded the demo, and then, started playing shows and stuff like that.
And that was just on tape, right? Because I think I remember I had that cassette tape when you guys first put that out.
Yeah, that was just on tape.
And then in 2003, you guys put out Fathers and Sons, and you recorded at Dead Air, right, with Will.
Yeah.
I saw the pictures. It looked like a cold recording session, that's for sure. Can you tell me about how that was? And
Will was really skimping us on the heat. He really wanted, he wanted it to feel like that punk aesthetic. We're living in a squat. Just joking, Will. But no, it was great. I mean, he was someone that we knew sort of like through shows and looked up to. So it was, I don't know about for Brendan and Luke, but for me, a little bit, and anytime we'd record with people, it felt a little bit nerve-wracking in terms of just kind of like, this is someone that you're friends with, you look up to, you like their music. And so it's kind of like, am I going to mess up while I'm playing and look like an idiot? But that was really, we'd record with Mike for the demo, but this felt like the next extension of that. And, obviously it was more thought out in terms of the songs, and we'd practiced a lot. And so, I think I don't know how many, I mean, we stayed over there. It might've been a weekend, or maybe, maybe it was 2 weekends that we had to go back and forth and just sort of, figured it out as we went. We had ideas of songs and things we wanted to layer on and stuff like that. But it was a good experience just to try to, think about doing an LP and what we thought it would look like and stuff like that.
Yeah, I 2 of my bands recorded at Dead Air too. It's always been like a great experience for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think the first band that I was in, I recorded with. It was somewhere in Littleton, Mass. I forget the guy's name. You might know it. It was like, I think he said that he had recorded like an Enemy Soil 7-inch or something in like Littleton, Mass. I'm not sure. I forget what the name was. But
yeah,
that was.
We didn't extend ourselves too far in terms of like recording. Like we recorded with Will I think maybe 2 or 3 times, and then we tried out machines with magnets, and that was sort of like, and then we did some stuff on our own. Um, but it's like, I guess for us, like we found people that we enjoyed working with, and it was kind of like we thought about trying other places, but then it was also kind of like, we already knew how it worked and had built a relationship, so it was a little bit easier because they knew sort of what we were looking for, and could help us sort of achieve that and make us sound better than we actually sounded.
Now, with your record company, how did that start? Because that came before Sinaloa. Like, how did you think up that, like, I want to do a record label? I mean, you put out some great records. I mean, Anton Boardman, The Body. Wasn't there a Wolves Ampere split?
Yeah, yeah. Record company might be a little bit steep, a little heavy, a little
A
heavy.
record label.
I put records out and I didn't do a good job of mail ordering all that much. It was sort of same extension of hanging out with Brendan, Luke, and Pat when they played music, and it was kind of like my into being part of it and being like, well, I don't play music, and I can do shows, and this would be something else that felt like, I mean, I think the whole idea of going to shows at the Red Barn and seeing kids doing shows and things like that, it was kind of like, I mean, it was a whole DIY aesthetic of kind of like, you could do it. It wasn't like, it just, kind of blew my mind of kind of like, oh, I could do shows. Or there was kids in bands who were playing shows, and it was like, it just was out of the realm of what I had known before that. So I think for the record label, it's like, I liked these bands and I wanted to put them out and see other people be able to get them. And so that, it was easy with Edelvrij because I was with them all the time. So they recorded they recorded with Kurt at God City in one of his, before he is where he is in Salem. And so that, I like just kind of putting that out and being able to put my hands on kind of what I thought it could look like.
Yeah.
And then it just sort of extended from there. So through putting that out and then going to shows and stuff like that, just making connections with bands of people I liked and the music that I liked. So, got to put out not a ton of stuff, but everything I did, I was, invested in the people there. So I liked it.
And that label went on for like 7 years, right? Because you started in '98, and then the last thing you put out was the Tiny Hawks record, right?
Yeah,
that was 2005, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. As when you asked me to do this, I was thinking like, oh man, I can't remember like when things came out, or even the order of all the records that I did, which wasn't a lot, which speaks to itself. So but yeah, I mean, it just got too much, like in terms of like I wasn't great at sending stuff out, or and then playing in a band and all that. But yeah, I got to do, I did the record with Edelvrij, then they did a split with Tipping Canoe. I got to do Anton Boardman. I did a record for Kolya, which just sort of, that was a weird one because I didn't have to do a lot. Like they had already, I don't even remember the story. I know that they'd already like recorded and sort of started things in motion, and they needed some support with it. I got to know those guys, and like the music, it reminded me of sort of like that Moss Icon, Native Nod kind of thing, and I was really into that. So that just sort of happened weirdly, and then I got to do the Ampere Wolves record, which was a lot of fun, and just seeing. I think you were at some of the shows where they did like the Punkastra and stuff like that, played together, and so that was just a lot of fun. I got to do a Body record, and the Tiny Hawks record, and I had done. There was this band from Providence called V for Vendetta. They were a 2-piece, and I started doing an LP for them. I can't remember if the CD actually came out on Mr. Lady or not, but they had broken up and they weren't going to tour anymore, and they weren't like in contact with each other too much at that point. So it was kind of like, does it make sense to see this through if nobody's gonna, nothing's going to happen with it and put that much money. So it never, nothing. I have like the master plate somewhere, but it just never saw the light of day. And I have some test pressings and stuff like that, but nobody ever got to. I'm sure the CD came out, but the LP never came out. So that was like the mystery record.
Yeah.
And
Now do you have all the releases still in your possession that you did?
yeah, I still have. Yeah, I have got some of everything. So anybody's looking for stuff, I don't have a lot of it, but some of it. Oh, and I did. Well, I missed it. I did a CD for Luke. I did 9 Billion Names of God.
Yep.
Gonna kill me for not saying that. So I did a. I can't remember if that was a lot. Maybe that came out before Tiny Hawks. So yeah, I think that was everything.
Yeah, I saw V for Vendetta. I think you set up the show, the show in Medford that I had posted this week with you guys. It was you, Anton Boardman, and V for Vendetta. It was in like it was around Tufts in like a house, I guess. Like
Yeah, it was. And I think New Idea Society played, which was Mike from Yulesid and Steve from Caven, and then they had some different people playing here and there. I feel like they played. I didn't do that show, but our friend Rich, who went to Tufts, I think he put it on, and he would always help us do shows. So like, he did some fests through Tufts. You might have gone to some of those, and some of the shows that you have that I've seen that you've posted were in his basement. So like, there was a Punkestra show that was there. There was a Books Lie show that was there.
Yaffa Kodo played there,
Yeah.
right?
So I would do shows, but sometimes it was hard to find a space, and so he lived on campus and was always game for it. So like, I could do shows through him. We did that Yafet Kodo show there. I don't know if you went to that. I did a Yaga.
I went to the Hot Cross. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was a great show.
there. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like in the city, it was just kind of like finding kids who would let you use their house or had access to places, and because it was harder to find those spaces. Like the times that I did find a sort of like a Knights of Columbus or something like that, they would never ask you back to come do shows. Like we did one in Alston for I can't remember what they're called right now, but someone like messed up the bathroom, and then you would lose money, kind of like, yeah, we're not doing shows anymore. So
yeah, I think did that happen out the Cage in Cambridge? I mean, I know when City of Caterpillar played in Mannequin, somebody broke a window or spray painted something, and then I didn't see. I think that was one of the only shows that I saw actually. I might have seen one or two shows there, but after that place was like not doing shows.
Yeah, and I didn't do that show, but yeah, I mean, that was the hard part. It just I think people didn't know what they were getting into by letting you do a show there, and then they figured out, and it was kind of like, yeah, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Like I think about when we did it in Lawrence, like we would do all these shows, but we would have the basement or this other space, but there was all these guys there who were there to go to the bar, and they probably hated us. Like we weren't causing trouble, but I imagine those guys who were going there to drink did not want to hear this loud music while they're trying to watch TV and talk with somebody.
Yeah. The last show that I did with you guys that was at Knights of Columbus or at AmVets. We played up.
Was it?
You guys played upstairs. Yeah, it was. I think it was at Knights of Columbus, if I'm not mistaken. It might have been at AmVets. I mean, it's one and the same. But
I remember. I just remember it being like this long space, but I remember there being like way more kids because we hadn't played. I don't think we played New Hampshire. I mean, we played at that kid Tyler's house a few times.
Yeah.
But not a lot of like, not a ton of other shows. I feel like we played at. There was some. I don't want to call it a club, but there was some other space that went out, and we played there once. I don't know if it was like, it wasn't Sad Cafe, which is an awful name. But there was somewhere else that we played. But I just remember like playing that show and being, super surprised that many kids were there. It was a cool show.
Yeah, New Hampshire back in the day would pack shows. Like I said, Safe and Sound was always packed. that's where the first time I saw Reversal was up there with Esuk
Yeah.
and Bastion, and I had also seen Cave in there, and Converge played there a bunch of times, and they always, whoever rolled through, I don't know how they did it, but like I saw Fall Silent, I saw Darkest Hour when nobody knew who they were up there. I mean, shows up there. I saw Earth Crisis in Cafe Savoy in Manchester. So it was New Hampshire was packed in back in the day. So I mean, there's always been kids that are, dying to go to shows in New Hampshire. Plus, a lot of bands like, I don't know if you know the bands from New Hampshire, like Ukla the Mock was like a big metalcore band from up here, and Fault, and I'm trying to think of like other bands that played around here at that time.
Yeah. I didn't know a ton of those bands. Again, like I was very sort of like in my own world of like what was going on in the Merrimack Valley at that time. Like I didn't need to go far to find. So, which of course, like, you hear about all these shows that were going on in other towns or in Boston. It was like, oh yeah, I didn't go. I missed all these shows because I was just sort of like, you just went to the ones that were at the Red Barn, or there was shows in April and Methuen and stuff like that. So it was kind of like I didn't need to go anywhere.
Yeah, Salem. What was the one in Salem? Salem Dairy Elks Club. Was that the one that?
Oh yeah.
A lot of Merrimack Valley hardcore shows.
Yeah.
I saw several shows there.
Yeah, I must have gone something there then, but that's probably as far up as I went in New Hampshire. I mean, we would go. I mean, it was like a regular weekly thing of, Brendan, Luke, and I would go to, and Pat would go to Newbury Comics there, all the time, and just spend all our money.
Yeah.
And get judged by the guy who would sell us records.
Some of the tours you did tours with Daniel Striped Tiger and Ampere, Life with These Speeds. You did a tour with. How were those tours? And I know you went to Europe a bunch of times. How were, like, what were some of your great memories of those tours, and how was Europe the times that you went?
I mean, all those tours were amazing for their own reasons. One, I mean, we just got to spend all this time with these groups of people that some we knew, like Life at These Speeds, we didn't know. Our first tour, we had done the U.S. And we played Portland, and some of those guys had come out to our show and helped us with a show in Portland. And we just sort of kept in touch, but we didn't know each other well. And we had this back and forth of kind of like, hey, do you want to do a tour together? We're thinking of coming to the West Coast. They were game for it. None of us knew what we were getting into, and we all packed into their van and used their equipment, which could have gone really bad. Like if we had not liked each other, it was like, we weren't there that long, but it could have been terrible, but it was amazing. I wish that we always talked about trying to do more with those guys, but it never happened. I mean, we did, when they came out this way on, I think 2 other tours, we got to do stuff with them. So we did a weekend with them and Stop It. And, oh man, Paul, who did Perpetual Motion, and I can't remember his band's name right now. We did a weekend with them, and that was amazing. And then with Ampere and Daniel Striped Tiger, we already knew those guys. So it was sort of, I wouldn't say it was easier because, anytime you're sort of sharing a van, it's a little bit dicey of spending that much time. And, but it was great. I mean, the Ampere tour was kind of crazy. We jumped in to a van in Western Mass with them, and the drives were crazy. So we had 2 weeks to get to the West Coast and back. So we, our first drive was from Amherst out to Detroit. So we just drove all night long and then played a show. And then I think the next show was maybe from there to, I can't even remember if we went to, I can't remember where the next place was, but they were long drives. But it was fun, it was just like being with that band and getting to see them every night. It was kind of like, you knew you were going to see an awesome band every night. So it was kind of a no-brainer. And that was the same with both of those. And then with Daniel Striped Tiger, we had gone to Europe already. We went to Europe the first time with Ampere, which was great because, Will had been there. We had never been there. We didn't know what we were getting into, and it made it easier. But that was, Europe, we went 3 times, and each time was amazing. I mean, I wouldn't say the shows are I don't know, it's just a different feel over there. Like everybody's taking care of you, so you get to a place and like they're feeding you and you're staying there. And uh I mean, you're staying in some questionable places sometimes. You're staying in like a squat that's like, oh, there's these dirty mattresses or these dirty mattresses. So like there was always sort of like a like a plan of like how to get to bed. Like everybody would like get in their sleeping bag and like roll it up, and then you'd like hop onto the mattress that maybe had scabies, maybe didn't, who knows. And then just hope for the best. And there, there's definitely places where it's like, yeah, we're not showering for a couple days. Um, but besides that, like, you're the squats are just like well run. Like they've got real sound machine. Like they had like a real PA, and they've got food, and just everyone was taking care of you, and the drives weren't terribly long. Whereas here, like, East Coast is pretty easy, but you get to the middle of the country and you're sort of like you're kind of driving sometimes, and
Yeah.
it's hard to know if like we definitely had a share of shows where it's like I think the similar to like when I was doing shows as a kid, it was like, oh, it's a good idea to have this, like, I want to see this band, so I'm going to have them play, but nobody's coming out, or I've never done a show before. So definitely had some experiences like that, but all in all, I mean, all those tours were great. Daniel Stripe Tiger came with us to Europe, and they did half of the tour with us. And again, just it was great seeing them every night and getting to play with them. And we got to do some weekend stuff with some bands. Like we got to do a weekend with Off Mine. That was really fun. So just getting to like have an excuse to play shows so you get to hang out with people is pretty great.
Yeah, no, it's and on top of that, you probably saw a bunch of bands that like maybe you hadn't seen before, and you were blown away by some of the performances. Like I always hear stories of people touring and they don't know this band that's opening up or jumped on the bill, and then it kind of blew you away. Was there any like European bands that kind of blew you away when they played with you?
Yeah, I mean, in Europe there was I mean, we knew some of the bands, so like we got to play with Ditro, we got to play with Lakiat. So just being able to like see those bands live was like, this is incredible. So those were always fun. And then I think and then through the States, I mean, we got to meet some really great people and like just play shows where it was like, it was just a lot of fun. Getting to hang out. Like I remember going to, we played Reno a few times, and it was just like, it was kind of like going to a second home. Like they were just, it felt very European when we were there. Not in the sense, like just that, like you got there and they took care of you and they hung out with you. And I don't know if they even knew who we were, but like they were excited to see us. And so
Yeah.
we played there, I think 2 or 3 times. And each time was like, it was just really comfortable and really fun. They had like a really tight knit community. But yeah, we got to play with a bunch of bands that were just, really fun and good.
Now, was there any bands back in the day that like you didn't see that you wanted to see? Like, was there one band that you were like, oh, I wish I saw live, but you never got to see play live? Because there's a few that like I love that I never got to see, and I didn't know. Even older stuff, maybe like, oh, I wanted to see Black Flag and I never saw them, or something,
Yeah,
something to that
I mean,
effect.
for Black Flag would be pretty cool. I always wished there was bands that are like either around the same time, but or just weren't coming around. Like that band Shotmaker. Never got to see them. I don't even know if they came around, but they may have. But wished I would have seen them. They're kind of one of those top bands that are just like so good.
Yeah.
I really like Native Nod growing up, and so that's a band that, or Frail. Like I don't know if I haven't gone back to listen to Frail if it stands up at this point. Might be too much China symbol for me, but they were a band that just like the energy. So yeah, I didn't get to see any of those bands. And there was a bunch of West Coast bands like you think about, like Swing Kids or Heroin or Mohinder. Like I really like those bands. Never saw Rorschach. So those bands like would have loved to see, but just I don't think I really knew about them at that time. They weren't really in the periphery at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to a million shows, and a couple of bands that I didn't I never saw was 400 Years. It just, the timing was off, and I never got to see him, which I was totally bummed about because I'm a huge fan of 400 Years.
Yeah,
And another one is Race Band, and I never saw Race Band, and I love the earlier Race Band and stuff. I'm not like huge on the older stuff they did, but I was dying to see them too, and it just never came into the fold for me.
yeah, I've heard you talk about that a few times, and I keep meaning to. I don't have as much video as you do, but there was a period of time where I started videotaping a bunch of shows. I don't know why I stopped. I think it was just like, I mean, like it's kind of a headache. Like I just want to enjoy the show
Yeah.
and carry this around all the time. But I've got a few 400 year sets, so I had to put those up so you can see. And I definitely have, I've got some of Race Band from the New Bedford Fest. So I'm gonna have to share that with you at some point.
Yeah, I'm glad to see like so much YouTube stuff. Like the guy that is it Sully Vegan? Is that
Yeah.
he put out some crazy stuff. Tim Morris from New Jersey.
Oh yeah.
His videos like blow me away, and it's just great to see like more and more stuff on YouTube. I know Hate56 just put a couple old Converge things up, and he also put up a old Snapcase one just like a couple days ago. But I love seeing these like lost tapes that are finally getting the light of day, and people can actually see like how it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That Hate56 guy. I mean, I know they're not all his that he's videotaping, but he's got. I mean, he must just go to shows all the time.
I mean, granted, I'm not huge on the metalcore stuff anymore.
Yeah.
But like he archives, like I said, Converge and
Right.
older stuff like that. I mean, the first like Hatebreed shows and stuff like that. So it's fun to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think he's doing a good job. I don't know his process or whatever. I know you can send your tapes in and he fixes them up, and then
Right.
I don't know if he sends you back your tapes. I don't know. I'd be afraid of doing that. I just bought a camcorder off of eBay because mine
really?
died. So now I have like the DVD burner. So I'm just gonna start burning DVDs again through my 8mm. I still have some stuff that's lost that I've never put on the internet or my Instagram and stuff like that. Like I said, the show in Kingston, I hadn't seen that forever, and then I messaged you and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get footage of this actually like back in a couple days. So, which is funny. I mentioned that show because I have the laminated original flyer of that right here.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I also have, which is way too small for me. I always show people like the shirts I have because I'm a fat guy now. But I have an old Sinaloa shirt.
That's a good one. That's a good one. I don't have any of that stuff. I mean, I've got our records, but I don't know. I never took any of the shirts. Maybe I've got like 2 of them, but one of those things where I was like, why didn't I keep one of everything? But it was kind of like, well, we just wanted to sell them and have people have them. So I didn't really think about it. And I'm not going to wear them. So I didn't really have anywhere to put it.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I mean, we didn't play a ton of shows when I was in high school, Sweethearts, but I don't have anything. I don't have the CDs we put out. I don't have the shirts. I don't have the shirts. I have the MP3s, but I don't have the packaging that we put out. I don't have the shirts that we did. Like, I mean, it just happens. But I always ask people if they have like all the some of the merch or all the albums. You have all the albums though, right? That Sinaloa put out. Yeah,
I've got everything in some form, at least one of them. And if we did, we did a couple comps and have that stuff. So I just kind of, for that, I tried to, make sure I kept, at least one of those so I would have it.
Yeah. And the last thing you guys put out was in 2009, right? Was it Chapel and Basement was the last thing you guys like put out, or was it something else?
We did a like a one-sided 12-inch after that. So we did that tape, the Chapel and Basement, which was sort of just us redoing an album, but acoustic and with some, kind of changing the songs a little bit. Thought that would be sort of a interesting approach. And we had access to this church that we could record in. So it was kind of like, let's take advantage of this. But then our last time over in Europe, we did a one-sided 12-inch. I think it's got 4 songs on it. I don't think it has like a title to it. So that was our last. I want to say that came out in maybe 2010. And
Now,
then
have you guys been working on any songs? I know you guys are still like, nobody said that you guys, quit as being in Sinaloa. Is there any songs you guys are working on, or are we going to hear a new Sinaloa album in the next few years, or what's the?
would love to. Luke moved out of Boston. Brendan and I both have kids. And we all just got sort of busy in our own different ways. So, I mean, we have like a daily text thread. So we're talking all the time. It's not like anything happened, but it just became hard. So I think Luke moved to Chicago, and then I feel like I can't remember the timeline, but we did record 2 other songs that we just never did anything with, and they're not finished. I mean, we didn't put vocals or anything like that. We always talk about like we should, do something like book a cabin and just play music and like record stuff. But we just haven't bit the bullet with that.
Now, Luke says he's in the fucking lab, man.
Well, Luke's always working on something. He's been working on this 9 Billion Names of God record for some sort of like masterpiece that he's been working on for like 20 years.
Yeah, he's a big Celtics fan like me, so we go back and forth. Today's game was very painful, so I feel Luke's pain and my pain with that game. It was painful, especially to the Knicks. So
yeah, that's pretty rough.
But on that note, you guys have such a large catalog. Has anybody approached you about, or are you thinking about doing like a discography type LP or CD? Just, I think that would be awesome, just because, I mean, you see a lot of bands doing it now. So
yeah, I mean, sounds pretty fun, but nobody's ever asked us. And I don't think that, I mean, we wouldn't do it ourselves. That seems like a little bit too, I don't know. Just seems like we wouldn't do something like that. So, I mean, if somebody asked us and it felt right and it kind of looked the way we wanted to, it could be a fun project, but also knowing that they're probably going to lose money on it. So,
did you do the As the Sunset show at Tufts, or was that your friend?
I think that Rich and I worked on that together because John, he's in Daughters. He was in that band, and I just remember he and I connected quite a bit around that time because I think I did that show, and he was just a super nice guy. I haven't seen him in forever, but just a really nice guy. And I remember helping them out with that show, and I can't remember if I think we played with them, but I can't remember if we played with them in Rhode Island at some point. But he was the only one I really knew, but really nice guy.
Yeah, definitely. I only remember like Wolves and As the Sunset's playing that show. Do you remember who else played that show? Because I videotaped it, but I only videotaped Wolves and As the Sunsets. I don't know if we got there late, because like me and Brian were always traveling from New Hampshire, so it'd always take us like, and then we'd have to find parking, and like we're racing to get into the show on time. You know what I mean? I'm not sure if somebody else played that show or not. I know it's a while ago, and
yeah, I can't remember. I mean, I'm sure if I asked Rich, he probably has like a list of shows, or he might have recorded that one too. He recorded some of that stuff, so he's the one, the Sully Vegan. That's him.
Oh, nice. Nice. That's now what was I forget what I was just gonna ask you. Anyways, usually at the end, I usually go through little rapid fire questions.
Okay.
And, shoot them at you. My first one: favorite New England punk hardcore band of all time for you?
All time. I feel like I can't do one.
Well, give me 2 or 3.
And I feel like as the years went on, like I would say beginning, and it's changed obviously like as I get older, but like, I have to say Edelweiss, because they were sort of like the band that kind of, I was already into it, but was like the band that was like, oh, I can do all these things. And those guys are, were really tight. Anton Boardman, I think, because they just were a very different band to me, similar in the same way as like Edelweiss, but was really into them and just had a good relationship with AJ and Dan, and still, AJ and I talk all the time. But just their approach to music, and they did lyric sheets, talked about songs more than they actually played songs, and just the bass drum was very different. And then, I mean, Tiny Hawks, I feel like, is an overlooked band, but they're incredible. If you ever saw them live, like, just insane. And that record I listened to pretty regularly. The first one, the second one's good too. First one I'm probably biased to because I helped with it, but they just, they blew me away and just sounded a lot different than other bands. And then there's like the bands growing up with, like, Converge was huge for me because I hadn't really seen a band like that. They were obviously, like, pretty metal in the early days, but just to see their trajectory, and so they were pretty huge for me. And bands like Piebald and Caven were also pretty big because I knew those guys grew up around, we were the same age, so just seeing them start from where they were and sort of where they went, those were bands that I would always see.
I mean, it's crazy that Converge is still going.
Yeah.
They're such a machine. Like, they never stop. But when I think that they will stop, they just put out something else that's, like,
Right.
crushing.
They've only gotten better. Like, their sound continues to evolve. Like, you listen to, Halo and Haystack is very different than, like, where they are now, which is cool that they've done that and, like, gone to different places, but sort of kept true to kind of like what they're trying to do.
Yeah, like Piebald was like another game changer for me because, like, coming from metalcore, and then I first heard Piebald, and all my friends were like, "Oh, you like Piebald?" And, like, I was super into Piebald. The first record that they put out, I was full-fledged into it, and they kind of changed my thinking too as well.
Yeah.
And they were fun to go see. Everybody's, like, singing the lyrics and dancing and doing, like, that was the first band I saw dancing besides, like, when Transistor started the dance craze. When they started, I think Piebald was the originator for me, at least, that I saw.
Right.
The question that I was going to ask before that I forgot, have you been listening to any new heavy stuff? And what bands have you been listening to? If you've been listening to, like, new, like, hardcore screamo bands, like, from nowadays?
I'm trying to think, like, sometimes I just don't, obviously with the internet, and it's just, like, so much and not knowing where to start. But I checked out that Frail Body record. I like that. That was, it was kind of a nice surprise. I just sort of, obviously through Death Wish, it wasn't like I stumbled upon it, but I was always kind of like, I was like, oh, this is pretty good. I like that. I just started listening to that new Terminal Bliss, and that's pretty interesting. Plus, it's got, guys from a bunch of bands that were great. So, but that's just seems like so unhinged and crazy. I don't know what they'll be like live, but that record just sounds like it's like pushing the speakers. It's really cool. And then that new Uniform, I don't know if you listen to them, but that record's pretty awesome. I've been into that. I don't know what else beyond that, like in terms of, kind of hardcore punk stuff.
Yeah, Frail Body's really good. Have you heard Foxtails? I like Foxtails a lot. They're from Connecticut. They got a girl that fronts them. It's really good stuff. It's all over the place too. It's like they play soft and then they come in crazy. She does, like, regular real melodic singing, and then she comes out with, like, some crazy screaming. It's really good. I'll send you a link after, but it's good. And I didn't know if you heard For Your Health, that they've been, like, really hot lately too.
No.
I think Death Wish was, like, doing their shirts or something. I don't think they're out. They have a new album coming out. I don't think it's on Death Wish, but I know they were kind of promoting them, like, shirt wise and stuff like that. But they're really good too.
Gotcha.
I think they're from Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. I like that Soul Glow record. That was like a nice surprise. Yeah. Oh, this is kind of crazy.
Yeah, really good.
Two buddies and I were talking about. It feels like, sounds a little bit like a, like there's elements of like a San Diego thing going on at times.
Yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely refreshing. I think nowadays it's almost like not a resurgence of the scene and the culture, but all these new bands and young kids that are making music now. It feels like late 90s, early 2000s to me. You know, I'm old and
Sure.
jaded, I guess, but it but it feels like a resurgence to me. I know there's always been bands in between this time and back then
Yeah.
when we were going to shows and stuff like that, but it just feels refreshing
Yeah.
lately.
Totally.
Um, all right, my next question. Sorry,
No,
I go on a tangent.
I like it.
My second question: what was the first punk hardcore show you attended?
Oh God. I don't. I mean, that band Dorknob played. I mean, I definitely went to something. There was probably like a battle of bands that they played, so I don't know if that counts. Uh, First show was probably Red Barn, but my guess would be like Piebald would have played it. Um, but I can't remember, you know, who else would have been up in the mix at that point. So, yeah, maybe Caven played, maybe Gambit played. I'm not really sure, but it was definitely there.
Red Barn was always fun. I think I went there like maybe 4 or 5 times, and every time was like a great show.
Yeah,
It was always fun there.
yeah. I did. They did a. I don't know if you were at the last show that they did, but I got some. I recorded that show a little bit, so I got Caven played and Yulcid played. I can't remember who else played, but I think those were only two bands that I videotaped. But it's fun to see. The cops ended up shutting it down, which sucked. But Caven got through most of what they were trying to do.
Yeah. Now, all the videos that you did, have you put those on like YouTube or anything like that?
I have them on Vimeo, and I had like this grand plan to do something like it'd be neat to have like a website where I put those up and then like contacted the bands to do like a mini sort of like a set questions like similar to what you're doing right now, just kind of like the same, like something of like looking back at that time, but never happened. So I have them on Vimeo and I've been slowly updating, but they take a long time, as you know.
Yeah.
Not through all of them.
Yeah, it's very time consuming. It's
Yeah.
and with we're both fathers. It's tough to like work and then spend time with the family and then do these side things too.
Yeah.
It's I do this for a hobby. I love it, and it, like I said, it's something positive for my mind, especially in COVID times.
Right.
So and I love talking to like the artists that I look up to and admire. So it's been fun for me to do it.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch.
All right, my next question. All-time favorite punk hardcore show you played? It could be one or two or three, like the shows that you guys played that were like top notch. You were like, this is like, why I do this.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know. The Weekend with Life at These Speeds and Stop It, and the other band was Wilderness Medicine. That was insane just because like those three bands were like so tight and so good, and it was just fun being with them. So just all the shows were really fun. I got to play those, so that was a lot of fun. Europe, all the shows were really great, but we got to play with when we went with Ampere and we played with Lafayette. The show was just like, it was kind of bonkers, like just one of the bigger shows that we had played. I'm trying to think what else. We were fortunate enough, like I did the last Orchid show that happened they did their last show and it was in Boston. And so, of course, I put Sinaloa on it. But the show, we did it at this place. I think it was the Advocate. I don't know if you ever went to there, but it was not big. And so I had booked it in, at this other space, but then like the week before they were like, they didn't want to do the show anymore there. So we found this place on Harvard on the campus, and this place was tiny. So we did two shows that night. So I forget if the first show was Wolves and Orchid and the second show was us and Orchid or vice versa, but I don't really remember a ton of, the show was just like, tons of sweaty kids, like insanity. So just like being able to play that and see those guys, like, really like those guys. And it was fun to see them out and be part of that show. So those are like, those are ones that come to top of my mind. There's other ones where it's like, just sort of like a pleasant surprise. Like we played I can't remember who we played with, but we played in Melbourne, Florida, which is like, again, I don't even know anything about that town, but we showed up at this house and there was just like kids were super into the show and like everybody was on top of you and it was just like very non-COVID friendly, but the show was just like amazing. So those are pretty awesome shows. We got to do a show with or two shows. One was there with Young Widows and My Disco, and just getting to play with My Disco and Young Widows was, pretty amazing.
Yeah, Brendan said Leeds with Ampere was up there.
What I'm trying to think of which one was Leeds, but I'm sure it was. He'll have to put in some more info there.
While I'm thinking of it, you also made a Tin Can Full of Dreams IG. How did that come about? Like, why did you do that? And if I can, like, give you anything, if you want to post it or whatever, stuff like that, are you going to keep going and like try to get footage and photos up there?
Yeah, I mean, it is something that I'd wanted to do. I thought about different incarnations of like, oh, could I, how could I sort of like document? And I don't have a lot of stuff, but that's an easy way. And obviously, with a lot of more more time on my hands right now, is kind of like, well, why not do it and see if people have stuff. I mean, I have some videos, so I'll try to post some of that, but maybe there's people out there who know someone who has photos and can share it, and that would be pretty awesome. So we'll see.
Yeah. That, speaking of sweaty shows, I remember that Zon show that you set up, right? Remember that? That was probably by far one of the hottest shows I've ever been. I was like drenched in sweat. That was it.
I think we had to move that show midway through. I feel like we started. I forget if we started at the Advocate and then we had to move to the record hospital, to the radio station, Record Hospital. That sounds about right. But that space was disgusting. Like, it was never not sweaty.
Yeah, I thought you moved it to wasn't it? It looked like a mini library upstairs, and then the cops came.
That was the Advocate. So I can't remember if we started at the radio station and moved there, or
I think that's what it was. Yeah.
But the one that you're talking about, you couldn't open the doors or anything because you're in the middle of Harvard Square, which is just a lot of people around. They don't want loud music, so it was always a little bit dicey doing shows there. But it was a great space. Yeah,
that show was great. I just remember it being so hot, and I do remember going like from one place to another. Everybody was like, all right, it's at, this is the address. Like, everybody jump in the car now and go. But that was a great show. That was definitely a good show.
That was a lot of fun.
All right. My next question, all-time favorite punk hardcore show you attended that you watched and not played?
I mean, I'm going to say maybe the first show I got to help out, like that show, with Converge and Caven and Piebald and In My Eyes and Jesuit. I mean, that's one I always look back to just because it sort of like was the first show I got to help out with and do, and made it seem possible to do stuff. So, that from sort of like a fan standpoint was pretty great. That one comes to mind. And then there was, other ones that I played. So it's a little bit hard. Like, we got to play Anton Boardman's last show, and so that was really fun. The Orchid one was really great, but again, I got to play those, so a little bit different.
Yeah. My next question, I don't know if you're a movie guy, but what was the last movie you watched?
So the last movie, so my friend, my two guys that I lived with in college, and Matt and Jeff. So Jeff played in Orchid and was in Panthers. He does this band called Low Estate that you should check out. And he does a bunch of podcasts. We have been doing a podcast that we're recording. The working title right now is called Docs Till Death. And so over this quarantine for the last year, we text all the time, and we just noticed, like, if you ever go on Amazon Prime, there's like all these weird punk documentaries.
Yes. Yeah.
Like why is this documentary about Southern California punk on Amazon Prime? Makes no sense.
Yeah.
So we were just like, it would be kind of funny if we did a podcast where we watch them and then talk about them. So we've started doing that. So the last one that we did was called You Weren't There, and it's about Chicago punk from 77 to 84. So that was the last movie I watched. It was okay.
Yeah, I mean, I go down a rabbit hole with Amazon.
Yeah.
I saw the Today Is the Day little
Oh
documentary.
yeah, right.
And I also got sucked into that death documentary too.
Yeah.
It's surprising. I'll start looking, and then it starts popping up on the bottom, and I'm so surprised at what they have. I'm like,
yeah.
it's
Like
crazy.
I don't know how some of those got there, but so we know that we're sort of in it for some pretty terrible movies and some that'll be good. So we'll see how it goes. But it's just fun. I mean, we don't see a lot of people, so it's been fun just to kind of connect and talk about that stuff, but also, got to spend time with those guys. So
yeah, definitely.
Still working on it, but it'll see the light of day at some point soon.
In my last question, if you've been listening to hip hop or you like hip hop at all, what have you been listening to for hip hop, and what are some of the artists that you like?
I mean, I like hip hop. It's a little bit hard with kids because you're like, how much do I censor it? So sometimes it's if I'm in the car, if I think about it, put it on. But I grew up really into when I got into hip hop later on, it was really into Tribe Called Quest and De La Soul and Farside and stuff like that. So that was pretty big for me. I remember early on, like I went to summer camp when I was in elementary school, and I had I had a Def Leppard tape, and it was I think it was a Def Leppard tape, and I traded this kid in my bunk who had a copied tape that was just like this black tape of NWA, and I traded for that. And I remember like I would hide it in my one of my drawers so my parents would never find it, and it had there was no way they would know what it was unless they were like, hey, we should listen to what he has in there. But I remember being terrified that they would find it. But yeah, I mean, that stuff in terms of kind of like, when I was younger, I went from like NWA to like Ice-T and Ice Cube, but then found Tribe Called Quest and, Black Star to leave. That was pretty big. I got into some of the Def Jux stuff, so I was into like that Cannibal Ox. I don't know if you listen to that record. I listen to pretty often. Like I really like that's really stood the test of time for me.
Yeah.
I think it was the first or second year of the fest. So I would write letters, like I was saying, and I went to a show at the Middle East that was Cannibal Ox, Mr. Liff, and I want to say Aesop Rock, and I wrote them letters and gave it to them at the show. They never wrote back. I figured it was worth a try. Like it would be cool if one of them were like, "Yeah, we'll play this fest."
Yeah, definitely. That would be awesome.
They never did, so they probably threw it out as soon as I gave it to them.
Yeah, I kind of went on like a hip hop craze for a little while. I kind of stopped. You probably heard me talk about it. I kind of stopped going to heavy shows, and then for almost like a 6 to 8 year span, I had just been going to hip hop shows and recording stuff, basically at the Middle East, because my buddy was a promoter there, and he was also a talent buyer for the Middle East for a while. So he would let me in, and he would let me go to the side of the stage, and I would just record with my phone.
That's awesome.
But yeah, like I saw Cannibal Ox a couple times there. Mr. Lift, what was him and Acrobatics band, The Perceptionist.
Oh, Perceptionist, yeah.
Yeah, that like I saw them a couple times. Actually, they got back together again just like a few years ago. So I saw that. But like you said too, sometimes you just don't want to record and you just want to watch the shows. That's a lot of the time. Like I don't know if you went to Fuckfest in New Bedford. I don't know. I think like the New Bedford Fest turned into that one when Usurp and Neil Perry and Joshua Fipper Battle played.
Okay.
I think Crestfallen played, and then I think the day before, or the day after, it was like when As the Sun Sets just was like changing to Daughters, and A Trillion Barnacle Laps was still like heavy screamo-y kind of stuff. They weren't doing like that much, but I don't know if you were there, but I didn't bring my camera one of those days, and it's just like you just get tired. You just want to enjoy the show, like you said. And also, I don't like to stay stiff like this. So it's hard which I can't stand videos that go like this. You know what I mean? So when when you're staying still the whole time, it kind of, you just kind of want to bob your head. And
I mean, I feel like when you guys were recording back then, like, you were trucking around like not a small camera at that time. Obviously now it's a little bit smaller, but yeah, it's just like you don't get to enjoy the show. You're just sitting there thinking about like, oh, do I need to move it to this person? Like if you want it to look good, it's like you got to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
Or you're just like pointing at someone's feet the whole time, and it's like, why did I waste the time doing
it? Yeah, sometimes I would like cut people's heads off, or I would just have like the drummers like snare drum, and like it was great. Like the first one we took, my buddy's, it was like one of those camcorders that had the VHS tape in it, and it was about this big, and you had to hold it like this on your shoulder. It was crazy. That was like the late 80s, when we were going to the channel in Boston and see shows like that. I only have like a little bit of that, though. I think I have like a Murphy's Law set where Mighty Mighty Boss Stones plays with Murphy's Law, and then there was a smaller like room in the back of the channel called The Edge, I think it was called, and I have like Wrecking Crew and Killing Time played that show, and Eye for an Eye, but I didn't record Eye for an Eye, which I'm bummed out about. But those times were fun. But I mean, holding that camera was ridiculous. I know me and my buddy did Biohazard. We recorded Biohazard way back then, but we lost the tape. And
really?
Yeah, I wish I still had it though, because we were like sitting on the stage at the channel, like recording that. And I think Sheer Terror played, and Paul Bearer like got naked, and like I was like a mess back then.
You went to some pretty crazy shows.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I always say that the first show I went to was 84. Well, I was talking to my mom about it, and she was like, no, you went that was 1983. And I was like, you sure? So I got in touch with the kid that brought me to that show. And the whole time I thought I went to Gallery East. It was the channel, and it was in 1983 when I was 11. And I thought I went to Gallery East, but he's like, no. He's like, no, I never went there. But I thought that was the venue, because I hadn't gone like from 11, and then I started going when I was age 15 again, because like I said, I was scared of that first show. But that was he told me it was like the angry, because all I remember is SSD and DYS, but it was like Angry Samoans played, like they were the headliner at that show. But I think we saw like 2 songs from them, and then we left. But I had always thought it was Gallery East, and I thought it was 84. And my mom's like, no, you went in 1983.
That's crazy. I mean, we watched all ages. And so to see those shows, I was thinking about like, oh, Hal was probably at some of these. And they were, I mean, like, you go to shows now and like they're violent, but I think about like how young you were. It must have been like, what is happening?
Yeah, well, that's what scared me. I was so scared at age 11 when I went there that I was like, I can't go back. Like I loved it, but I loved the energy, and I was like amazed at the feeling, but I was scared shitless. And so when I got a little older at age 15, I kind of missed a lot of that all ages stuff. Like I saw one bit of it, and then when I went back, it was more of the era of like Youth of Today, Judge, Agnostic Front, Leeway, Slapshot when they were like first coming out, stuff like that.
Where Jerry's Kids were already gone at that point.
Yeah, the only band that was still around kind of was Gangrene. They were still doing stuff, but it was kind of that their style changed a little bit. Yeah, the first shows that like after that first punk show that I went to, I started like my friends brought me to like it was like metal shows. So I saw like Creator and Flotsam and Jetsam with Jason Newsted before like he went in Metallica. Like weird shows. I saw Violence, and it's funny, Rigor Mortis, like you said, the Amazon documentaries. I'm pretty sure they have a documentary.
Oh, really?
Rigor Mortis on there. You and Jeff should watch that one.
We're trying to stick within like the punk hardcore realm, but maybe we'll dip out.
AJ says you're a huge Leeway fan. I mean, I love Born to Expire. I love that album. That was I was a huge Leeway fan back then, because the channel back then would have Saturday and Sunday matinees, and the lineups would be insane. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it was a fun time. Did you ever get to go to the channel at all, or the
No.
Rat? Did you go to the Rat?
I went to the Rat, but not. Again, like I was going to shows that were close to home. So I feel like I went to Middle East and I went to a couple shows at the Rat. I can't really remember. I definitely saw like Texas Is the Reason there. But then that was gone. You know, I can't remember what year that was gone, but it wasn't around too long once I was in college. So
Yeah, the rat got real violent after a while, and I kind of put a bad taste in my mouth after a while. I had gotten jumped at the rat.
oh
And
really?
yeah, it was
Dude.
crazy. It was like like 15 FSU guys pounded on me, but it didn't stop me from going. It was just like I went to that show, and then I think that was a come and correct show, which
Okay.
I mean, it's
Yeah, I
insane.
think that also like the idea of FSU. Like I wasn't going to a lot of shows like that, but I definitely saw Earth Crisis at some point. I just remember being like, a little on edge of kind of like what's gonna happen, just because you'd hear things, uh, and it seemed like sort of no rhyme or reason. Just like, hey, we want to beat somebody up. Um, so hopefully
Which
nobody
which
FSU's on gonna
which
come
is
out.
crazy because I had seen those guys early, like early on when they first started going into shows, and then by the time years went on, that's I think I had hit maybe one of their cousins or something like in the pit, and then it was over after that. You know what I mean? Uh, but I remember that show, and I saw Dead Guy in Bloodlet at the Rat. 10 Yard Fight, I think, played that show, and there was do you remember the band The Accused from? I think they were from Seattle.
I don't think so. No.
The Accused and Brotherhood, which was like a straight edge band from Seattle, also
Yeah.
played, and that show ended in like a big brawl too, and that got shut down. So the Rat was it was a scary place when I was a teenager, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally.
All right, I don't want to keep you for too
Oh,
long. I know, like I said, we both have children and family. Sundays are family time for me. I don't know if it's for you, but I just want to thank you so much, Pete. Anything I can do to help you with the Tin Can Fest, I can try to burn. Once I get my camcorder going and I get the burner going, I can just send you that whole
yeah.
DVD. I don't know if I have everything, but a lot of it you've seen on my page. So
Yeah.
I have the whole Orchid set. I have the whole Combat Wounded Veteran set. I think I have most of your set, Off
Okay.
Minor, Montcalm, Breed Extinction. I'm trying to think who else. Life Detecting Coffins.
Yeah. Wolves played that day.
I have the Wolves one.
Uh,
Yeah,
I forget if Ted Leo played that day or he played the day before.
I think he played the day before.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those guys played the day
Yeah.
before.
I'd love to see it at some point.
But and like I said, if anybody's out there and has footage of that Worcester, I need to see it. I need
Yeah.
and I want proof
Same.
that Seisha played and I saw Seisha.
Someone have everything recorded except Seisha.
Yeah, I know. I want to thank you so much again, and I appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah.
And, anything you need, let me know, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thanks, Hal. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Pete. All right, man. Take care.
See ya.